Government's building that big fence along the Rio Grande. Who wins, who loses, and will the thing actually keep immigrants from sneaking in? Stay with us.
Now on PBS. On the Road with host David Brancaccio and senior correspondent Maria Hinojosa. Funding for Now is provided by the Orfila Family Foundation, the Park Foundation, the Marguerite Casey Foundation, the Nathan Cummings Foundation, the CS Fund, the Desjardins Blackman Fund, and by contributions to your PBS stations from viewers like you. Thank you.
The Now team has been in Texas, taking a close look at that fence going up along the border with Mexico. Lots of Republicans and many Democrats in Congress voted for it. And when the president signed the project into law in 2006, he called the fence, quote, an important step in our nation's efforts to secure our border. Well, in Texas, we found an abundance of people who think the projected $49 billion project is not going to work. Senior correspondent Maria Hinojosa and producer Kathleen Hughes have our report.
We're in Brownsville, Texas, on lush farmland owned by the Loop family. Nearly 1,000 acres of golden sunflowers, robust citrus,
best fruit in the world,
and lots of watermelons. 3 generations of Loops work the farm and the busy farm stand.
Okay, what do you need?
Leonard Loop and his wife Debbie are senior management.
We all work as a unit, all our families. There's 4 different families, and we all work together, and if one can't do something, the other one picks up the slack.
The Loops farm runs alongside the Rio Grande River. In Texas, the river forms the natural border between the U.S. and Mexico.
It's not even a stone's throw now, it's about half a stone throw. But that's Mexico.
Like most Americans who live along this border, the Loops routinely encounter people crossing illegally.
If you could see, look down the bank over, you can see where they come ashore, come up over the bank here, where the grass is all beat down. And for some reason or other, they've left some of their clothes here.
Leonard Loop says he's lost count of the number of times he's called Border Patrol, reporting that migrants were on his land, poaching watermelons and other crops. So you'd think that the Loops would be among the loudest cheerleaders for the multi-billion-dollar fence that Homeland Security is putting up. They're not.
Initially, I thought that maybe a fence was a good idea, and the more I've learned, the more I realize what a mistake it is to put a fence up.
Here in Texas, where you don't mess with property rights, landowners all along the Rio Grande are up in arms. Their list of complaints is long, but chief among them, the border fence in some areas is being built 2 miles north of the border. That means thousands of acres of privately held land will soon be walled off south of the fence, relegated to a stretch of no man's land between the Rio Grande and the government's 18-foot-high steel fence.
I said we don't need no border wall.
For months, students and faculty at the University of Texas at Brownsville protested Homeland Security's plan to run the wall right through their campus. A coalition of mayors and officials from 19 border towns and cities, including Brownsville, say that in the rush to build the wall, Washington is ignoring their concerns and trampling on property rights.
So from your understanding, where is the wall going to be built, as you understand it now?
Along the base of the outer base of the levee.
The Loop family has been told that bulldozers could arrive any day.
Okay, so that means that this entire area here, which you own a lot of, this is going to be behind the wall.
Most of the Loop family farm, over 800 acres, including the house where their son and grandchildren live, will be walled off on the Mexican side.
A lot of rain.
The Loops are not just angry about the government's demand that they sacrifice their property. Like many border residents, they believe the fence won't work.
We are being made to pay for the mistakes that our president, our Congress, and our senators have made. For 25 years, these people have been coming over this border, and they have done nothing but let them keep coming.
4 times in recent years, major immigration reform legislation has died as Congress and the White House gridlock over hot-button issues like guest worker programs and amnesty, programs that would let people in.
We have to know who is coming across our border.
Back in 2006, anti-immigration hardliners like San Diego Republican Duncan Hunter managed to push through a law that was all about keeping people out.
The fence works. Let's replicate this fence across the southwest border so we know who is coming into the country and what they're bringing with them.
You might imagine that the fence, or wall as some call it, would be one continuous barrier running across the entire 2,000-mile border. It's not. It's 700 miles worth of short fence sections, fences that will stop and start, leaving huge gaps in between. The idea is that those gaps would be secured with a virtual fence. It's what President Bush called 21st century technology.
The bill authorizes the Department of Homeland Security to increase the use of advanced technology like cameras and satellites and unmanned aerial vehicles to reinforce our infrastructure at the border.
Just days before the 2006 general election, when no candidate wanted to be called soft on immigration, President Bush signed the legislation. But so far, the technology for the virtual fence has failed key tests, and no one can say for certain if and when it will be up and running. In the meantime, the physical fence is going up. Around 300 miles have been built in California, Arizona, and New Mexico, mostly on public lands owned by the government. But now, as the project moves into Texas, the fence is intruding on private property and meeting resistance from landowners like the Loops, who just can't make any sense of it.
Straight across the way the crow flies, you have about 12 miles of nothing. No fence, no anything. Do as you please.
Leonard Loop showed us a marker at the end of his property where the fence will stop abruptly. It's one of those planned gaps. The government will leave this field right on the border wide open. For more than 12 miles, there'll be no fence at all.
So actually, people come up this fence and walk around it and be home free unless they got sensors or cameras or something here.
Congress put the fence project into the hands of Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff. Chertoff has repeatedly brushed off critics. Texans living along the border, he says, must sacrifice for the safety of Americans living further north.
I respect private property, but you cannot make border security and national security an individual choice for each individual landowner.
Congress gave Chertoff enormous power to build the wall, the kind of power no political appointee has ever had, the right to waive any federal law that gets in his way without judicial review. So far, Chertoff has waived 36 laws, including the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Farmland Protection Policy Act. This aggressive approach to the fence is welcomed by most Border Patrol agents. Just here in the Brownsville region, thousands of people cross without papers each year. Agents say they're overwhelmed.
If I've got my infrastructure there, my roads, my fencing.
We caught up with Tom Rudd, who runs the Brownsville Border Patrol. Inside local headquarters sits a bank of screens where activity along the border can be monitored. Rudd says the fence, when it's built, will only help.
Now, if this guy's here and someone just crossed and there's a fence here, well, it's going to be almost a 90% chance or 99% chance that he's going to get him because the fence is there. So you got the manpower, then you'll have the technology, and you'll have the infrastructure.
Rudd is the patrol agent in charge of 23 miles of border in and around Brownsville. He's expecting a total of 9 miles of fence segments. The segments, Rudd says, will act like funnels, pushing migrants into areas where his agents will be waiting to capture them.
The fence is just, like I said, it's going to bring that balance.
But the fence isn't the entire length. That means that they'll just say, I need to move to a part where the fence isn't.
Sure, and we'll